NBS Frontline.
Like the calm before a hurricane, Uganda's political scene had been eerily silent until now. In a matter of hours, arrests of key political figures reignited memories of the age-old pattern that has defined every election cycle for over 2 decades. Who has them? Where are they being held? We don't have them. These phrases all too familiar to Uganda's electorate.
Somewhere within 1 year is where he was raided.
We do not know, we can't see him, we can't find him, not even any clue of where he is.
Some people have chosen to replace the word arrest with abduction. It's their choice.
Yet, amid the chaos, there are whispers of a government fully bowing to judicial pressure, or is it? The Supreme Court's recommendations on military trial of civilians stirred widespread debate, and in Parliament, sessions marked by the legal jargon, resistance, and a frustrated Minister of Justice.
You cannot take 2 weeks. If really you are concerned about the condition of your client, the Attorney General, whom you supervise, Chairman Mao, was a party to this matter.
Just because of the bureaucracy, because they are not tried, they are on a pre-trial.
It took a directive from President Museveni himself for retired Colonel Kizza Besigye to be presented before a civilian court. Appearing frail and weak from his ongoing hunger strike, Besigye's presence in court was stark reminder of his bitter and protracted standoff with the ruling government.
For me, once someone is sick, I'm not going to continue with that person.
Will Besigye emerge victorious? Or is this just another episode in Uganda's recurring political drama? Is this about political maneuvering or a genuine fight for justice? And as the National Unity Platform treads carefully between compliance and defiance, is Uganda heading towards a familiar ending or a new beginning? This is The Frontline.
NBS Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Frontline. My name is Charles Mwangu Shampagi. Tonight we discuss 3 weeks since the decision of the Supreme Court. The wait-and-see game is continuing on whether the beneficiaries or intended beneficiaries will actually see the fruits of this decision. One in particular is retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, former 4-time presidential candidate, former Bushwa fighter, and a leading opposition figure who returned to court yesterday on that application of for a habeas corpus, was presented in court and sent back to Luzira, but the judge said he will give his decision on notice, meaning the wait continues. We'll discuss the politics and the law surrounding this political play. On the panel tonight, I have a fairly large panel. We are being joined online by one of Besigye's lead lawyers, Arias Lukwago, who also happens to be the mayor, the Lord Mayor of Kampala City. Do we have the Lord Mayor online already? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Very nice to have you, Councillor Arias Lukwago.
Good evening.
We have from the National Unity Platform, also lawyer, Secretary General David Laus Robongoya. Very nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. A very good evening to the viewers.
We have Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, Minister for ICT and National Guidance, member of the Central Executive Committee as Vice Chairperson, Western Uganda of the NRM. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, fellow panelists, and good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here once again.
I'm going to request Andrew Mwenda to put his phone down so that we do the show. Andrew Mwenda, old man of the clan, all the way
M23.
All the way from Kanyandai village. Chief Executive Officer at the Independent. Very nice to have you, Andrew.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for inviting me, and good evening, viewers.
You're also the spokesperson for PLU, aren't you?
Directive Communications, that's what you should say.
Director Communications at PLU. Very nice to have you.
Thank you.
From the Uganda Media Center, a frontliner comes from Kapelebyong and Mulanda, and also from Chagwe. Ofono Opondo, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening to my fellow panelists and to our viewers.
And another frontliner, Shadow Minister for Finance from the PFF, Member of Parliament for Kira Municipality, Ibrahim Ssemujju. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, and salamu alaikum to the viewers.
I want to start with you, Council Arias Lukwago, to bring us up to speed on the latest concerning your client, retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye. We're interested in knowing his state of health at the moment and your interpretation or explanation of where the application you took to court stands as of today.
Well, all I can say is that as a country we are embroiled in a legal quandary, or you can call it legal conundrum, occasioned by nothing else but impunity which is prevailing in the country. Right now, all the institutions that are charged with administration or dispensation of justice are in total disarray. Whoever is in charge of Besigye's matter and they are holding this file, it has become a hot potato for them. You saw what happened with Justice Singiza, and he was at a loss as to what to do. He couldn't even tell when he would be delivering the ruling. And he gave a very shocking decision or order that Dr. Besigye be returned to Luzira shortly after his appearance before court, because the order was habeas corpus, appear before court, and for the prisons authorities together with the Attorney General and other state actors to show cause as to why they were keeping him in jail. Shockingly, he just ordered that he be taken back to Luzira because he could faint within the court premises any time, instead of directing that he be taken to the hospital. The same thing happened in the court today, if I may bring you up to speed, when we appeared before our worship Nancha for a ruling on enforcement of rights. Of course, we put in an application under the Human Rights Enforcement Act of 2019 for the unconditional release of Dr. Besigye, because there is no remand warrant to keep him under prison's custody. Shockingly again, she also halted the proceedings for 60 days on account of Dr. Besigye's failing health or deteriorating health, and said Dr. Besigye, she recognizes the fact that he cannot stand the trial, and therefore the proceedings are halted. Again, surprisingly, Dr. Besigye had not been produced. There was a remand warrant, a production warrant she had earlier issued, and no reprimand was made to the prison's authorities for defying a court order. Again, she never directed that Dr. Besigye be taken to any medical facility for medical attention.
Mr. Lukwago, if
happenings in Parliament are equally buff.
If I could cut in a little there, we're listening to you largely as a practicing advocate, and the question is the decision of Judge Singiza yesterday and the decision of Magistrate Nancha today, are they outside normal legal practice? Number two is, I would like to hear from you. Dr. Besigye's failing health is a result of the hunger strike he's been undergoing. Are there other, is this continuing? Has he ended his hunger strike? Is he still on hunger strike? Could you bring us up to speed on those two issues?
Hunger strike or no hunger strike, Dr. Besigye is entitled to access to a medical facility of his choice, a personal physician under the provisions of Article 23. I think that is the bottom line. That's where we have to start from before we gravitate to those issues of hunger strike, because according to Mr. Museveni, that is self-inflicted. and according to the Honorable Baryomus there, that he advised him to resume his normal intake of meals. But point is, Dr. Besigye has got a right to do whatever is within his means to express his indignation at the way the rights have been abused, including going on a hunger strike. Whether he's on a hunger strike or not, you wanted me to confirm. That is now for the prisons authorities to tell, because we have not had any interaction with him. When he appeared in court yesterday, we had no occasion to discuss anything. Today, he was never brought to court, and there was no explanation as to why he was not brought to court. The fact is, whether he's on a hunger strike or not, the state which is keeping him under illegal incarceration owes him a duty of care to ensure that his life is protected. And they cannot in any way run away from that responsibility. Why are they not taking him to the hospital? Even if they don't want him to go to a hospital of his choice, why not a government hospital like Mulago? The Honorable Baryomus visited him over the weekend. Why didn't he advise or even direct the authorities there that please evacuate him, take him for medical examination, rather than making cursory observations that he seems to be now emaciated or emasculated because of hunger strike? So let us expand from our own, vocabulary, any discussion, conversation about this matter of great national concern, anything to do with the hunger strike. The issue is illegal incarceration. Why are you keeping? I would like to hear any justifiable reason. Even the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, Kafuzi today, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I'm going to make a very he made a fool of himself before Parliament to begin fumbling around with the process that they are transferring the files, as if now they can hide behind the red tape to violate the Constitution. The decision of the Supreme Court was made way back on the 31st of January. And you know for sure, any pre-trial processes have got a time frame within to be handled under the Constitution, 48 hours. The 48-hour rule is cast in stone. You cannot run away from it. No any other circumstances the state is given a latitude to keep custody of anyone without producing them before court. So we are talking about now a period of close to 3 weeks. No charges, no proceedings before any court, nothing at all is happening. And this is the reason we are saying we are back to the dark days, full throttle. Nothing to hide right now. Back to the dark days of detention without trial, and also those processes of enforced disappearance. Because we are not talking about Dr. Besigye, but other prisoners of conscience who have been kidnapped without any trace. And this is the situation now we have to contend with as you across board, regardless of our political persuasions. And I wouldn't want to hear anything from Honorable Baryomus and others who subscribe to NRM trying to rationalize this kind of madness which is going on in our country. We must deal with it squarely as Ugandans.
Thank you. Let me come back into studio here and come to you, David Laus Rubongoya. We understand your national mobilizer. Is that the title? Has been missing for some days?
Yeah.
Have you been able to trace where he is?
Well, good evening to the viewers once again. Our head of mobilization, Chairman Nyanzi Fred Sentam, as you know, was abducted, and up to now, we don't know where he is. He was actually abducted, and people were able to record some bit of footage, although there was a lot of violence and there was some shootings, but you could see that there was a drone and people in civilian clothes holding guns. But also there was, at the scene, a police van which was trying to scare away the people. So it was very, very surprising and ridiculous to hear the police claiming not to know where he is. But it was not only Chairman Nyanzi was taken away, as the law presented in Parliament today, we have 7 people, leaders and activists who are confirmed as missing. But this evening, just before I stepped into the studio, 2 of our election management officials, especially after exposing them, and because the car which they had when they were abducted from Mpigi had a tracker unknown to these DIS or CMI fellows. And so when they checked today, they saw that, yesterday and the other day, they saw that the car was parked at Mbuya Hill at CMI. So after exposing that, this evening they drove 2 of them to Chireka, where they were released. And we just spoke with them. They are so much intimidated. They told them, do not speak to the press. They did all manner of things to them. They were interrogating them. What is Bobby Wine's next plan? What is his plan B? The same things they always ask these people. Who funds him? And those kinds of things. So 2 of the people that we've been looking for have just gotten home right now, just a few minutes back. So we condemn this impunity. As of now, we don't know where Chairman Nyanzi is. We don't know where other 2 male officials of the Election Management Committee are. 2 activists, one called Sharif, another called Chinobe, who was picked up from Nansana. We don't know where they are up to now, but all of them were picked up by security operatives moving in drones.
Dr. Chris Baryomonsi, you visited Dr. Besigye over the weekend and made some comments. I've seen some exchanges between yourself and Engineer Winnie Byanyima, who is the wife to Dr. Kizza Besigye. Could you tell us what state you found him in? A few people saw him yesterday when he appeared in court for those brief minutes. What is his state? What kind of discussion did you have with him, if at all? And Arias Lukwago says you're holding a hot potato as government over the Besigye matter.
No, thank you very much. And Arias Lukwago said he doesn't want to hear me say anything, so he can switch off his TV now as I speak. Yes, I visited Dr. Kizza Besigye in Luzira on Sunday in the afternoon around 4 p.m. And like I commented, he was weak, but not in the critical condition. And there are many charlatans who have started saying, you are lying, and they have never been to a medical school, because that was a professional comment that I made. And of course, the weakness was occasioned by his failure to eat, to take meals. We had a discussion with his personal doctors and the prison authorities, and his doctors had wanted to take him for medical tests. The prison authorities were insisting on taking him to government facilities, but I advised that no, he can go to a clinic of his choice. And that's how he was taken to a clinic in Bugorovi. And I know the examinations which were done, I constrained myself from saying this on TV, but I can say he doesn't have a material illness as such. So the weakness that you see, the frail situation, is largely because of not eating. And I think today is day 8 of his hunger strike. Of course, even you, if you don't eat, after 2, 3, 4 days, you start getting weak, because there are metabolic and chemical changes which occur in your body. If you had time, I would tell you the science. And he's still... This is a 2-hour show. It's not elastic.
Go ahead.
So I think from the information that I have...
Gentlemen, can we listen to Dr. Baryomonsi?
No, this is the indiscipline which is a problem with you in opposition. You will have your time.
But Chris, I visited you when you were arrested. Now you are busy.
That's an anthem.
Honorable Ssemujju, please allow Dr. Baryomonsi to make his
submission. You always want to say he visited me.
I didn't visit him when Museveni arrested him. I am the one who went to visit him.
From the information that I have,
he also went.
He is still...
I didn't.
From the information I have, so please, can you stop with these recorders? The information I have, I think he continues with the hunger strike, and today is day 8, and every day that goes by, he gets weaker and weaker.
The big question is that you, as a government spokesperson, why are you still holding on to Besigye 3 weeks after the Supreme Court said you can't continue with the trial in the military court.
What the Supreme Court ruled was stop the proceedings of all the civilians in the court-martial and transfer these cases to the civil courts of competent jurisdiction. And I think yesterday there was a case in court where Kizza Besigye was produced in court, and there were arguments. Kizza Besigye's lawyers were arguing that he should have been released because his warrant of arrest or remand expired. And the lawyers, on the other hand, were saying, no, the Supreme Court didn't order for a release. It said transfer. And it didn't give a timeline how long you take to transfer. So they were arguing that the mere fact that Supreme Court said transfer, it acknowledged that there are charges. It didn't drop those charges, but rather it ordered transfer, and the process of transfer has been going on. And the Attorney General, immediately after the judgment, I think started the process, but I dare say, once again, that the lawyers involved, I think, delayed to extract the decree, because from the records we have, the decree was extracted and transmitted on the 14th, which was on Friday. But fast forward, I think the files have now been transferred from the court-martial to the judiciary. And I think Kizza Besigye's file and the co-accused, I think their files went yesterday. So right now, the DPP and the judiciary are perusing the files, and most likely next week, Kizza Besigye will be appearing in the Chief Magistrate's Court. That's the information that I have. So we are waiting for the decision of the judge as per yesterday's hearing, because he said he will give his judgment on notice, meaning any time he can rule, or if Kizza Besigye appears in court, most likely next week, then his lawyers can ask for bail. You see, people were putting pressure on us in Kigezi. You raised this matter before the president. And I was telling them, Kizza Besigye is not appearing before the president. He's appearing in the courts of law. And the only way he can get out of prison is through a court order. Yes, the law does not allow the president to pardon somebody on remand. Let me say, as a lawyer, I think the president can only pardon somebody who has been convicted.
Yes, Dr. Badiomunse, yes, so I have two lawyers on the panel. Yes. That's David Leus Rubongoya and Arias Lukwago.
Yes.
The Supreme Court decision emerged out of a petition to which Dr. Kizza Besigye and the others detained, the others in prison were not party.
Yes.
I have been listening to the arguments around extracting an order. My understanding is that the Supreme Court gave an instruction, they gave a directive on what should happen. The person who petitioned court was Michael Kabaziguruka.
Yes.
He's not in any prison facility. He's a free man out there. So the beneficiaries and the lawyers who should have extracted that court order certainly cannot have been Dr. Besigye's lawyers.
No, but they should have picked interest because
interpretation.
They were beneficiaries of that court judgment because they had a prisoner who is remanded and who would immediately benefit from that. While, yes, the court order should have been pursued directly by Kabaziguruka's lawyers, but I don't think it was proper for them to go to bed and sleep when they know.
First of all, that is also not true. Maybe to give information, and Lord Mayor will speak to it. They actually drafted this decree a long time ago, and it stayed on the Attorney General's desk for such a long time, and he was not signing it. So that's one of the problems. But also, the Supreme Court, the wording of their order was very clear that there was a word immediately. And once a decision of the Supreme Court is given, or any other court, it starts operating immediately. You do not even need first extract this decree and all these semantics they are in.
And you see, this matter when it came to Parliament, I asked the government people, because the Attorney General told the Parliament that the court-martial has stopped immediately. I asked him, so this court-martial to hold the trials was moved by which decree?
Yeah.
Chris Bayomunsi, you look bad.
No, maybe to you.
To anyone sensible.
No.
It doesn't have to be limited
who
to
told
me.
you are sensible?
I said to anyone
You see
sensible.
the problem for you is you, Isaac.
You see,
you think you are sensible.
this Chris Bariomus
you say what you want to say.
When he was at Ginger Road here arrested.
Can we deal with the messaging?
No, I am answering.
Yes.
And I didn't want to go back
to, by the way, to speak. What is your problem?
Because it is very painful to him.
To who?
They were denied him even basic things like sandals, and they told him it is Museveni who has ordered so. That's why immediately after there, you went to see Museveni in Rwakitura. So you were in prison on Museveni's orders. You are now asking him, Besigye is not there, we'll say to Museveni.
So how is it related?
It is related.
How?
You see, the refusal to implement the Supreme Court decision is not a decision of cabinet. It's not his decision. It is a decision.
The Supreme Court has not been implemented.
What has been implemented?
I don't know what you are asking.
What decision of the Supreme Court has not been implemented?
You see, once the Supreme Court said, first annulled the sections of the EPDF Act that establish the General Court Martial, and the General Court Martial is no longer there. But that General Court Martial was the one that had remanded the Besigye. So the remand warrant expired.
That's not true.
You don't have to be a lawyer.
No.
The Court Martial is there.
I think
it is there.
I think
so. Besigye is Luzira on which remand?
Charles, this mob action needs to stop. I think that first of all, the opposition people are trying to blackmail the government by whipping public sentiment on a serious legal matter. Guys, let us have one discussion. The Supreme Court rules.
Hold it. Hold it.
The Supreme Court's judgment. The Supreme Court's judgment was that the trial of civilians should not happen in the General Court Martial.
No,
it should happen.
Hold it.
Nullification of the section that establishes the court martial.
Listen.
Hold it. We'll pull down.
That was the decision.
We'll pull down the decision.
So you can see he's heckling. Is this a problem that we have with them?
Allow one
you as authorized you to speak. You also have.
He is the one who has authorized me.
Honorable Ssemujju.
Yes.
Yes. Let's be fair. You jumped in.
No.
You jumped in.
It is very painful. Charles, we know the kind of people we are dealing with.
Andrew, go ahead.
So here is the issue. The Supreme Court's judgment was very clear. It said civilians should not be tried in the court martial. The case should be transferred to the High Court. It did not say that the charges against Besigye are illegitimate or illegal. It's not in the judgment. Therefore, what has to happen now is to transfer the case to the court. It did not say Besigye should be released. It did not imply that Besigye should be released. But let me guys tell you, see for me, the opposition, as you can clearly see, and Besigye supporters, try to run from the substantive issues of this case and hide behind the emotions. One, if Besigye is in bad health, as a result of what Dr. Bariomusi has said, him going on hunger strike, if Besigye is trying to commit suicide, it is his right to do so, in my view. He can take his own life. But he cannot use hunger strike to blackmail government to release him. Besigye is arrested in a meeting where he was planning to overthrow the government violently, in which case thousands of Ugandans would have died. Two, in that same meeting,
that's an assumption, Andrew.
Well, at least we all have the audios. And these audios, I told you the last time I was here.
Supplied by your boss, Moses.
Those audios, yes. I sent them to a friend of mine at Microsoft and two other friends at Apple, and they told me two things.
You got them as who, Andrew?
Well, as any person.
And it's where you have a
so do you see?
So you Mwenda, you got these audios as who?
So do you realize the trick? He's running away.
Who is persecuting Besigye?
But can you stop interrupting so that we can have a debate?
I'm just shocked that you say I have the audio.
If Mwenda has the audio like this,
Honorable Ssemujju, please. Hold
Can't
it.
you first listen to others so that you can have a civilized
debate? Let's have one
debate.
person speak at a time.
Let us have a public debate.
You can only have a civilized debate.
It does not matter how I got them.
So Mwenda, it does.
It does not matter how I got them. Who told you that?
Could you kindly respect the show?
But Ssemujju, can you stop disrupting? You will have your chance to speak.
Hold your time.
I am just asking a legitimate question. So you have these videos as
Honorable Ssemujju, please allow members to contribute.
So you can clearly
you have
see.
your time to speak.
It does not matter. You see, this is the issue I told them.
Conclude your thought.
You see,
in the case,
the abuse,
in the case, the
abuse of the state
but Charles,
authority.
can't you
Mwenda.
control this
One
person?
day you are in a government chopper, you are in a military uniform, they are picking children from the street that they are putting on a beret, and you don't see any problem with that, and then you want to civilize the debate.
Ssemujju, I am going to ask that.
Okay, so Besigye was planning to murder Museveni.
You are in a government chopper. So why are you going to murder in a government chopper?
Let me ask you this.
Are you a soldier?
Is Museveni,
Honorable Ssemujju, please hold
was
it.
Besigye in that meeting where he was planning to murder Museveni in cold blood?
Let me
guys,
some
because
questions to
these
you.
people of the opposition are trying to whip up sentiment.
Hold it, Andrew.
Let me make the point. Besigye was in a meeting planning to kill Museveni in cold blood. Did he subject Museveni to due process? In fact, I think Museveni is a very humane person. Why? Because Museveni could have kidnapped or abducted him from Nairobi, killed him from there, and would never have been seen. If it was me trying to kill me, I have no... Without following due process, why should I follow due process?
Hold it.
Hold a second, because he wants a shouting match. We can have a shouting match.
We can.
Yes, we can. So you want your man to kill Museveni, and Museveni should sit as
you have been abusing authority, Mwenda. You are in a chopper. You are in military uniform. And then Museveni kidnaps children from street, and they are charged in courts of law that they are putting on a beret.
How is that
related about abuse of authority? That's what you are talking about.
In every case you come, you are always involved in the petty arguments, like you are attacking him, but he was arrested. Mwenda, you were kidnapped. That's all that you do.
I am talking about
your lack of intellectual quality is not my problem. What you need to do, maybe go back to school or to your mother and be educated. Be educated. You are part of those who are coming here and whipping up sentiment and sounding stupid doesn't make anything. So where did you get? You have come and turned this debate into a shouting match. You want a shouting match? Then we can have it.
Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm very good at it. So I am going to tell you, your man Besigye was plotting to murder Museveni. Was he using due process in that process?
Andrew,
was he subjecting Museveni to a court when he discusses that he wants to shoot down his
Andrew, can I
Museveni is a human being. Museveni has, if I were in Museveni's shoes, I would not even have that man alive because he does not believe in due process. There is a process of removing a government. He does not respect it. So there is a process.
Which process did Museveni follow to remove a government? Which process did he follow?
It doesn't matter. Museveni succeeded.
He does.
Treason is only treason when you don't succeed.
Should you when he was removing a government?
Besigye did not succeed. Besigye did not succeed. Therefore, he's subject to the law which he has violated. Museveni's greatness is that he succeeded. Besigye has failed. Here is the point. Listen, you're not going to give this man whatever to try to run roughshod of everybody.
No, hold it.
We should. Why are you and Besigye not discussing the substantive case of what Besigye was plotting? Why are you saying, how did you get this evidence? Does it matter? Assuming I killed somebody and you stole the evidence or you bought it, does it matter how you got the evidence? The evidence is that the man was involved in a meeting to unleash violence in this country and kill the president of the country.
Can we put
he was plotting cold-blooded murder.
Can we put some questions
listen,
to you?
There is no way Besigye can claim that somehow his rights have been violated when he was planning to violate the rights of others.
Thank you. You've made your argument. Andrew, can we put some questions to you?
Yes.
Under the presumption of innocence, all the arguments you've just made are supposed to be proved in a court of law.
Yes.
That process hasn't happened yet.
It is under...
So you're making, you are making conclusions. Hold a moment. You're making conclusions on a matter that is before court, accusing Besigye of the many things you're accusing him of, without proof.
I have proof of audios of Besigye plotting murder.
No, you're not a court of law.
Exactly. But okay.
That's why we are saying.
Why are there prisons and why is there remand?
Listen.
Why is there? I want to ask you a question and you answer it. Every time somebody commits murder, they are remanded in court. I mean, they are remanded by court and they are taken to jail.
And right now, there's no.
Does that mean that the presumption of innocence is taken away? But for me, even that is irrelevant because these people are being political. For me, the question is, when Besigye was plotting to kill Museveni, what due process was he subjecting
Can I correct you? When Besigye was allegedly...
You think Museveni is not a human being?
Allegedly plotting to kill Museveni.
I cannot say allegedly.
Someone is suspected of having committed murder.
I have a confirmation of Besigye's voice. I am not the court can follow its own process. I'm not here to argue as a judge. I'm here to argue as a person who got evidence of Besigye's voice in a meeting planning to kill Museveni in cold blood. You cannot say that's a very simple thing.
Let me ask.
And let me tell you, Charles, just 1 second. I think Museveni, your way, you trust me, I will be killed in defense of you on this issue. I think you're a very nice human man. Because a man who was planning to kill you, you abduct him from Nairobi and bring him before competent courts. What would Idi Amin have done? Or any other person for that matter? Did the Americans take Bin Laden to a court of law. Besigye was planning terrorism. So he could even have been killed in that meeting. So for him to begin playing this stance of not eating in a prison and you coming here and making noise and defending a cold-blooded murderer, a person who was planning cold-blooded murder, I find it very demeaning and disgusting.
Let's listen, if you could, yes, Ofono Pondo, and then we'll bring in Council Elias Lukwago.
Well, I hope we shall have a calmer debate after that. But as you can,
I am so happy I have shut them down because
as you
please,
shut us down. Actually, you haven't.
Yes, but you are defending a man who was trying to kill somebody.
We are telling you to follow due
process.
We are saying there should be due process.
NBS Frontline.
You're still watching the Frontline. Ofono Pondo says it's on fire. I sent Cairo Monica sending a message with the fire signals. But that's a contest between people who know each other very well. Andrew Mwenda and Ibrahim Ssemujju. They work together for many years. But Andrew, you're going to listen to me when I make the call, and you, Ssemujju. No. Yes. You're going to listen to one another. Yes. As we have this discussion. I'm going to allow Ofono Pondo 2 minutes, and then I'll go back to Council Elias Lukwago. Please go ahead.
You see, there's arrogance, particularly from the opposition, that thinks that we in the government, in NRM, we are up to no good. They like playing games, and this Besigye case epitomizes the games of foolery. They think they're too clever and they will get away with the foolery. Where did we start with this case? Besigye is brought from Kenya. You can use the word kidnap. Yes. I have used the word brought back.
You're not going
we arrested him from Kenya. You can use the word you want. That's okay. You framed your narrative and we allowed you, by some of our own mistakes, to run away with the narrative that Besigye is being hounded because, and the moderator here said, 4-time presidential candidate, as if that is a title. But that's also okay. No, you are using it to draw sympathy that this man is in court not because of being suspected to be involved in criminal activity that Mwenda has alluded to. You want to invoke political sympathy that because he ran against President Museveni 4 times. There are many other people who have run against Museveni. They are not in court. Now, Besigye's wife, who, by the way, I replaced at the movement secretary as director for information. I'm the one who replaced her. 2000. When she was sacked by Museveni.
How is that relevant?
No. Admitted that her husband, who had traveled to Kenya to attend a book launch, was lowered by his friends, some of whom were British citizens. This is what Winnie Byanyima said on record, on TVs in Kenya, and repeated them here. And therefore, lends credence to what Mwenda is alluding to. Because Winnie says her husband was lowered away from the book launch by people he had not met much, and it is in that room that he saw a pistol on table and money in a box. So that is from Winnie's own mouth. And therefore we can put 1 + 1, maybe it will equal to 2 or equal to 3 or 4. And that's why, in the wisdom of the government of Uganda, they took him to the court-martial. Many people disputed. Some of us actually disagreed that probably shouldn't have been taken there, because in my word, I said on this show, that taking him to the court-martial, we resurrected a political corpse. That's what I said on this show. You condemned me for using that word, and for that phrase I said a political corpse, because politically Besigye had died. Politically. I mean in terms of electability and so forth. Now that action of ours has kept him on the media for the last 3 months. Now, you have heard Councillor Lukwago that he doesn't want to hear us. Who are you to say you don't want to hear us? If you really think you are powerful, come to this studio and we debate. But don't say you don't want to listen to us. For us, we are listening to you, even when we disagree.
What happened?
Now, you said
let
lawyers in any matter where lawyers are involved, there will always be two contending views. The Attorney General of Government said it was necessary to extract a decree which the prosecuting lawyers should have done. Now, you yourself, the lawyer, you have said here that it was not necessary. So how come the lawyers of Dr. Besigye extracted a decree, which in the first place, some of you are saying was not necessary? I watched Honorable Basara on the floor of Parliament saying it was not necessary. So if it was not necessary, why did they go to extract it? If it is self-executing, did we expect that the prison authorities, from the ruling of the judgment of the Supreme Court, that Byabashaija would open the gates for all those civilians who had been sent there by the court-martial? I don't think that is logical. But since lawyers are contending, and one is saying, no, we have to transfer these. If there are lawyers who say, just because the Supreme Court had ruled so, therefore these people automatically should be out, then why are you wasting time going to court to seek his release? Why don't you just wait for the doors to open automatically? But we say, in political philosophy, we say there's end of law and beginning of politics. You can talk about all your legal gymnastics, you can talk about the judiciary, you can talk about what. But it is the politics which directs the country, including directing the law. That's why it is Parliament which makes the law, not the law-making Parliament. And so, I think we need sober discussion on this matter. We need clear understanding where we want to go. But there are people who don't want that clear understanding because they think their narrative will take the day. Unfortunately for them, that narrative the Lukwago's are pursuing will not win for them the day. Yesterday when they went to court, why did they go for the human rights issues? I think some of them, I wrote an article, I said this Besigye case has even given lawyers who nobody knew gravitas. They are now being heard. They are now experts, and so on and so forth. And they think they can run away, they can build. And to answer the question you set here, I think it is mostly politics. Particularly from our colleagues in the opposition, they think they are going to run with this and raise political capital from it. And we wish them well, including those who don't want to hear us. You are not going to determine whether we shall speak or not.
But I can determine whether I should hear you or not.
So you switch off. I listened to you. I don't know why today you are so jittery.
You've made your submission.
Yes.
We've listened to it. You'll have your time. Let's get back to Councillor Elias Lukwago. We've been hearing the arguments in studio here. I'd like you to comment, to speak back to some of the issues that came up.
Whatever they have said, there are no arguments. You can only talk of rantings by Mwenda if they are a reflection of the mind of the state, and indeed that's the situation. Then the country is gone to the dogs when their state. Actually, those rantings, which are a reflection of the mindset of the state, they make Amin and Obote look like saints. If Mwenda can speak like that on camera And then the kind of demeanor he has exuded, the outrageous allegations he's making, and the chest thumping, the anger, the whatever you can talk about on camera. What happens behind the scenes there? If indeed Mwenda, like now, I can confirm is a state operative. If Mwenda got hold of Dr. Besigye right now, we can strangle him dead. That he wanted to kill Museveni. He's accusing him of murder. Do you know how many people Museveni killed when he was in Luwero? Do you know how many people have died under Museveni's hands? Do you know that Besigye lost his brother at the hands of General Kaguta Museveni? Musasizi, he died at the hands of General Kaguta Museveni. Do you know the people who have died at the hands? You know Mamenero, how he died at the hands of your good friend, the late Mayomba, and many others. Do you know how Kaira was killed and many others? And Mwenda is here say, oh, Besigye, it's abhorrible. It's his word. He committed a heinous crime. Oh boy, he doesn't even deserve any trial, any hearing, fair trial, fair hearing. Oh, Mwenda, please, do you own this country? He's speaking as if actually the state is Museveni, the state is Muhoozi, the state is Kaguta family, and nothing else. Mwenda, does this country belong to you? Does this country belong to the Kaguta family? So you think there is no constitution in this country? Even if, yes, as you allege that Besigye wanted to kill Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, don't we have a law in place? Don't we have the constitution? Isn't it Mr. Museveni who wrote the current constitution? Doesn't it talk about fair trial? Does it provide anywhere for a situation where one can be deprived of their liberty illegally? That they can be detained without trial? You have a Supreme Court decision which clearly quashed all the proceedings before the General Court Martial. And you know there are no charges pending against Dr. Kizza Besigye. If indeed he committed the murder as you are alleging, which charge has been preferred against and in which court? Even in the General Court Martial, where Dr. Besigye was dragged shortly after his abduction from Nairobi on 16th November, he was never charged with attempted murder against General Kaguta Museveni. He was never. Nowhere has he been charged with any charge of murder, attempted murder, or anything of the kind. Now here Mwenda is on camera making such outrageous allegations against Dr. Kizza Besigye. Shame upon you. Shame upon you.
Hold a moment. Andrew.
So why
hold it for a moment. Hold it for a moment. There is an argument that has been made that you lawyers for Dr. Besigye are skirting around the main issue, which are the issues that Andrew was talking about. Instead of allowing the due process of the law to go ahead, you are picking on other issues outside of the allegations that he faces. That by that process, you've delayed Kizza Besigye's justice for the last 3 months.
That argument, I don't even need to respond. It's neither here nor there. Because how have we delayed the due process? If anything, actually for us, we have always demanded that Dr. Besigye be subjected to the due process. Tell me, since the 31st of January, when the Supreme Court came out with that landmark decision, who stopped the DPP from preferring charges against the Dr. Kizza Besigye? Why wasn't he taken to the civilian courts and charged with it? They have a whole division of the High Court, ICD, International Crimes Division. Who stopped them from doing so? If indeed he committed the offenses in Kenya, where he was abducted from, who stopped those elements in Kenya? Those elements who crossed from here to go to Kenya, or even if they were security operatives in Kenya, who stopped them from arraigning Dr. Besigye in the courts of law in Kenya? Was it Lukwago? Was it any other lawyer for Dr. Besigye who stopped them from arraigning Dr. Besigye with whatever charges they had against him in the courts of law in Kenya as the laws of Kenya provide? Isn't it a crime in Kenya to hold a gun illegally? Isn't it a crime to plot to kill somebody in Kenya? Wouldn't it be proper for them to charge him in Kenya and deport him? Or extradite him? Don't we have extradition laws? Please.
Thank you.
Let me tell you this.
Those questions have been thrown back to us here.
When Obote wanted to keep people without trial, to detain them, to detain them without trial, he enacted the law. He came up with the legislation of parliament, the Detention Without Trial Act. Why don't you, Mwenda, advise Museveni to also come up with similar legislation if he wants to have any cover of the law? The Gracie Bingiras were detained under that law, the Detention Without Trial Act. The Balachichirias, the who. So tell me, if you are talking about the due process, he was talking about extraction of a decree. Do you want me to lecture you on constitutional matters?
Please give us.
Please, a declaration on matters of just let me say this, Charles.
Go ahead.
Let me complete this.
Go ahead.
When you have constitutional declarations, they are self-executing. You don't need a decree to have anything declared by the Constitutional Court or the Supreme Court on constitutional matters to be implemented, that you need a decree. They are self-executing. You mean on the 31st day of January, when the declarations were made, until the decree was extracted and signed on Monday this week, the General Court Martial remained in existence validly, legally? Why did it have to close shop before even the decree was extracted? You mean the constitutional provisions in the UPDF Act remained valid until the decree is executed? That is section 117. That subjected the civilians to martial law. That was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. You mean it is still valid until the decree is extracted? If you don't know anything, please don't expose your ignorance.
Let's bring the discussion back into studio.
He thinks that he's the one who's clever.
Because,
Andrew, you have had a lot of time.
No, I was in a shouting match with somebody. Yes. Did not make my points. I really want to make my points that I came here to make.
And that takes away time. The shouting match takes away time. So
yes, and you are the one who allowed it. If you don't want me to speak now, I don't mind going back home. I don't want to be
Andrew,
here if I cannot express my opinions. I came here to speak. You are unable to control him, so I want to make the points that I had on my phone that I wanted to make.
I was unable to control him and you, both of you.
I was trying to shut him down because he was shutting me down, and you were unable to shut him down. So we entered a shouting match where my points were not raised.
And we're still losing more time.
Yes. So can I please make my point that brought me here?
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Let me come to Lukwago.
Be mindful of the time of others.
Yes, I am not a lawyer. That does not mean I cannot understand the law or I cannot consult lawyers. It is not true that the Supreme Court annulled the sections of the court martial, annulled the sections of the court martial that try whatever. It simply said
sections of the UPDF Act that set up the court martial.
Yes, but what the Supreme Court did, it did not annul the trial or the charges against Besigye. It simply said Besigye should be tried, or for that matter, civilians should be tried in a civil court. So what is supposed to happen is to transfer Besigye from the court martial to the High Court. In other words, the ruling of the Supreme Court was very clear. It accepted the legitimacy of the charges, but said that the court martial is a subordinate court of civilian courts. That is one. The second thing that Lukwago does not understand is that Besigye was charged with treachery. What does treachery imply? If he had gone ahead and committed murder, he would have been charged with murder. He was charged with treachery because he was in a foreign country planning to come under the government here and kill a head of state. So that charge of treachery involves his plan to murder Museveni in cold blood. And we have audios actually of Besigye in this meeting. Me, where I challenge the Rubongweyas and other Ssemujjus and Besigye sympathizers, all of them have refused to discuss the substantive issues. They're always discussing he's on hunger strike. They're always discussing he's being... I want us, beyond the technicalities of the law, what are the substantive charges that have been brought against this man in a court of law, which you can discuss in the court of public opinion today? Are they saying that Besigye was not in Nairobi? He did not attend that meeting, and in that meeting, he did not discuss a violent armed insurrection against the state. 2, part of that plot to kill Museveni. We will play the audios. They will be subjected to tests. But these are accusations. You cannot say that simply because you are presumed to be innocent. It means the charges in a court of public opinion are dismissed. The courts will proclaim themselves on this issue. But we can discuss it now. Besigye does not respect the existing laws of Uganda. He has stated it in a series of interviews in Monitor, in Weekly Observer, on radio stations, that only a violent struggle can bring down this government. 2, in that meeting, he's discussing the killing Museveni. For me, I want to discuss it from a moral point of view. If I was Museveni, this dangerous dictator they're talking about, a man was planning to kill me in Nairobi. And Lukwago there is busy saying Kajira was killed, Museveni one was in Luwero, he was killing people with Besigye, they were together in the same bed. I see Winnie tweeting something and saying I'm being protected by Museveni does not protect me. But what I can say, Winnie Byanyuma, when Museveni was committing those murders, she's saying, when the Kajira was being killed, she was with Museveni, she was in bed with Museveni, both literally and metaphorically. Am I lying? Winnie Byanyuma. What right does she have to say that I'm being protected by Museveni when she was with Museveni, when so many people are political prisoners here, and she, in the worst years of NRM, she was the one defending this system. This system today is much more civilized. Its legal processes have improved and improved over the years. So I think that Museveni today is has a more civilized government than in 1986 when she was in bed with him. So another thing we need to address is Besigye has never applied for bail. Why? Besigye has never denied these audio tapes. Besigye supporters have never come to say Besigye was not involved.
Besigye didn't take plea in the court martial. He didn't.
But Besigye has access. He has access to many people.
Yes,
when he goes and visits him.
The court took the plea on his behalf.
Whenever people go visit him, let Besigye tell us. Even when he's in court, he can speak to anybody and say these audios are circulating are false. Let him state so, and we hear.
Shouldn't he wait for the court process before he makes that?
No, but what I'm saying,
Yes,
if they are fake, why does he wait for because we have 2 trials going on. There is a trial of public opinion and there is a trial in a court of law. So there is a court of law and a court of public opinion.
Yes.
In the court of public opinion, I want to hear those Besigye supporters like this David Lewis Luvongoya and Ibrahim Ssemujju Nganda. Let them tell us that these audios are fake.
Thank you. I'll go back to David Lewis. Yes. No, you two gentlemen started the shouting match. Hold a moment. Let's hear from David Lewis Luvongoya, then we'll come to you.
Well, what I can say first of all is that it is extremely shameful to hear Andrew Mwenda speak the way he's speaking, and really reflects the abuse of the law, the disregard of the law. He's speaking as if he's a constitution. He's speaking as if, because this country has laws, and we want to follow those laws. And I want to associate myself with the words which lawyer Elias Lukwago said, the Lord Mayor, that if they wanted, if they say, and we are not in a court of law here, Andrew Mwenda, all of us are saying that if the state claims there are cases, there are offenses, legitimate offenses against Dr. Kizza Besigye, follow the law. First of all, there is a presumption of innocence. There should have been a proper procedure of returning him from Kenya to Uganda through the extradition process. You could have easily charged him before the civilian courts, and he himself said that he was okay being charged before civilian courts. What he was opposed to and the Supreme Court agreed with
what he is opposed to.
What he was opposed to and the Supreme Court agreed with is that he did not have any business in the military court. He did not have any business in the military court, and the Supreme Court made it clear that he had no business there. But these people are refusing. And I heard him say that, I think it is Walio Musi was saying that General Museveni is not the one holding him. But General Museveni has made his views clear. I even saw him the other day saying that, they are going to use every means possible to restore the General Court Martial and ensure that it tries civilians.
President Museveni wrote his views in a letter that
but he even spoke out.
Hold it a moment. And he challenged and said, why not wait for the process? The thing that Andrew is asking for. Why not allow or call for a speedy trial?
Because, and you see why he is very, very wrong in that. He was saying in his writing, for example, that Dr. Kizza Besigye should have asked for a quick trial. But we have NUP supporters who have been stuck before this General Court Martial for 4 years, not being tried. Instead, regime operatives have been approaching them to tell them to plead guilty to crimes they did not commit. So when General Museveni says that he should demand for a quick trial before, first of all, an illegal court, but also we know how that court has been operating, which the Supreme Court now said is a disciplinary committee of sorts. It does not try people. It has not been, it just persecutes people. People are taken there. And then what follows is regime operatives coming to tell our people to swear amnesty papers, to confirm that they committed offenses they did not commit, and all that kind of thing. So what Andrew Mwenda is saying is completely ridiculous. Dr. Kizza Besigye is entitled to a fair trial. What the Supreme Court said was that the General Court Martial was not a competent court to try civilians. What should have happened, therefore, is that all these civilians who are being tried by that court should have been set free, and if the state, in particular if the DPP, after their investigations by the CID, the DPP could have easily sanctioned those files. The DPP, I mean, the Supreme Court cannot amend the Constitution.
Mr. Wongoya, you're arguing a process. And Andrew posed the question and said, if you were President Museveni, you receive intelligence that somebody is plotting to assassinate you, how do you respond?
But what we need to know is that Dr. Kizza Besigye...
You're arguing the legal process as it should be.
Yes.
But the accusations against Dr. Besigye...
But what I want to say is that this is not the first time...
Hold it a moment. Affect an individual called Yoweri Museveni, who happens to be the president of the country.
Let me remind you that in 2018, General Museveni claimed that our president, Honorable Kyagulanyi, was gathered with some people and threw stones at his vehicle, and the case collapsed. Let me remind you that the state assembled guns and put them there and told people that these guns were found in his in Honorable Kyagulanyi's room, and the case collapsed there. Let me remind you that before then, Dr. Kizza Besigye was charged with rape. The state operatives were all over the place saying that they had a lot of evidence pinning Dr. Kizza Besigye in the rape charge. Why did it end? The same state, you remember, brought treason charges against Dr. Besigye. Where did it end? So it does not matter for us. What we are saying is follow the law. Everybody who's watching us knows how this state operates. What we are saying, let the due process be followed. There are laws in this country, and we are saying that once the Supreme Court said that the General Court Martial is not a competent court, what should have followed there and then is to immediately release all civilians who are under illegal detention.
Please don't make your opinion, David.
Don't make your opinion,
interpreting. Andrew, please, we agree that
we are talking about the Constitution. We are talking about the Constitution.
Please.
And I'm saying,
if he is aggrieved on how government is behaving, he can go to a constitutional court and seek a declaration whether, when the Supreme Court said that these people should be transferred to the civil courts, should they be first released? That can only be interpreted by a court of law.
And I'm trying to explain to you.
Andrew, aren't we running around the same contradictions? Kabaziguruka went to the Constitutional Court. It gave a decision. That decision was appealed in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave a decision, and that's what we're arguing.
And my question is, can the DPP, for example, sanction a file from the court martial? Who conducted those investigations? The Constitution is clear, and what we are saying is that the Supreme, not even the Supreme Court of this country, can amend the Constitution.
Yes.
So what we are saying is that the charges, if they are competent charges, there must be there has to be a complainant.
So the Supreme Court wrong to say transfer this to
and when the Supreme Court says transfer, it is simply telling you now let these matters be handled by the civilian courts. And when they say that, it means that the process has to start afresh.
That's your opinion.
The process has to start afresh in the sense that there has to be a complainant, and the complainant, there has to be investigations. The DPP has to peruse these files and sanction them if the DPP feels that there are charges. And I was just drawing an inference as I conclude. I'm looking at the NUP supporters who are still stuck at Chitalia now. There are no offenses. These have not been tried whatsoever. No evidence has been brought to pin them for 4 good years.
Thank you. You've made your point. You made your point. Let me have Ssemujju come in, and then I'll come to you.
I hope
you remember that I'm also around.
Yes.
You can go,
please. Go ahead.
You see, and I am happy with this show. I didn't know that Besigye was facing a mob until today, when I have seen the mob in its own skin. Mwenda's friend, the main supervisor of the court martial, the CDF, every day he sends a tweet, we are going to kill you. I identified the tree. And to Museveni, that is a quick trial, which Besigye is refusing. The trial, as you have seen Mwenda clearly say, Besigye is a murderer. His friend, I don't know whether the chairman of his party, he has not once, he has said, I have identified a tree. We are going to hang a Besigye on Heroes Day. I have now brought the day forward. This is the guy who supervised the General Court Martial. And when Besigye and everybody else complained against the court martial, Museveni in his letter said, Besigye should be asking for a quick trial which he wanted to give him under the General Court Martial. If we have evidence, like Mwenda has claimed here, like Museveni and his family claim, why are they fearing to present that evidence in the courts of law? When the Supreme Court made a judgment, Charles, that that judgment annulling, actually nullifying the sections in the UPDF Act that established the General Court Martial, and the General Court Martial was no longer there. I have asked every single government lawyer to tell me under which regime was Besigye still be, under which regime did they continue holding Besigye in the, because this thing happened under me. I told you here the story the first day we were discussing that people were taken to Ruzira and they said the remand warrant will find you there. Because what stops this government that has all of this evidence in video, in film, on paper, what stopped them the following, the judgment was on Friday, what stopped them the following Monday to go to the appropriate court as ordered by the Supreme Court to take the charges and evidence and then get Besigye and formally charge him? What stopped them? Now, instead, Museveni has called the NRM MPs tomorrow to go and change the UPDF Act to re-establish the court martial. Why do they want to charge people in the court martial? And the reason is very simple, because in the court martial there is no trial. You can go and ask Aaron Kiza what happened to him. The court martial complained against him, sentenced him, sent him to Ruzira, beat him. That's what they wanted to do to Besigye. In fact, I think Kenya must have been the one that stopped them from killing Besigye in Kenya. Maybe the intention was to kill him. Because if you have evidence, really, for this huge evidence of Andrew Mwenda, present it to court. Mwenda, you are not a judge. Muhoozi is not a judge. Present this evidence before courts of law and get Besigye to be convicted. Because you have presented Besigye to every single court in Uganda. To the Supreme, to the High Court many times for rape, for treason, for misprision of treason, for everything. And once you're a government that keeps lying, even when you have something substantial, people will not believe you because you have been lying every day. You said you have evidence Besigye had raped a girl. You went through a whole trial and court came to the same conclusion like Besigye's lawyers that you are dismissing today, that this matter could only have been cooked in the State House. That was the conclusion of court. What stops that same State House from cooking another evidence? Because if you are there, you have evidence. You are dying because you have present this evidence before a competent court. You don't go and try Besigye yourself and convict him and then announce when you will kill him. The point that the Honorable Bariomus was talking about earlier, and I want to visit it, that all these matters is about Museveni, which Andrew has proved. I went to Masaka when the Honorable Segini and Alan were arrested. They were accused of being behind the Vijambia in Masaka. Court released them. And Museveni said they cannot go home for the next 2 years until Segini died.
Where and when did Museveni say that?
He said he did.
Where?
Publicly.
Where, when, how?
Do you doubt that?
No, I'm asking you to present evidence.
He said it in the State House. Like in the matter of Honorable Akamba. He said, actually, I'm the one who ordered.
No, I'm asking.
You have asked when and said in the State House.
Yes.
That's when he said it. And he kept them in prison for 2 years, Segrinya and Aran. And that's how Segrinya's life deteriorated and he came back and died. We hold Museveni responsible for the
people who don't go to prison don't die.
Yeah, but there are those that you have killed. So when you kill them, we hold you responsible.
Thank you, Honorable Ssemujju. Let me have the minister.
So they allowed me. I came with these 2 points. I need to make these 2 points because the first point is that once the decision of the Supreme Court was made, This government that has evidence should have gone to court to present the evidence and get Besigye charged before a competent court. That they didn't do. The same decision they took on stopping court martial from going ahead with trial because the Constitutional Court had said so. There is no lawyer who prompted them to go and stop the general court martial.
The second point?
The second point is that you are dealing with liars who have taken Besigye to court more than 100 times. Besigye has been the most imprisoned human being on earth. They have never convicted him of any offense. Even as I speak to you, he was in court, Buganda Road,
yes,
being charged with inciting violence. I don't know how many times Besigye has been charged with inciting violence. I mean, why do I believe you today? If you have been a liar, every day you lie.
Thank you. You made your point. Let me have the minutes and then I'll come to Ofono Pondo.
You see, our friends are the ones who talk of rule of law. And the question sometimes we have posed is, yes, Dr. Kizza Besigye is a high-profile political leader. If he is suspected of committing a crime, what happens? Does it mean because you are a high-flying politician, if security and police thinks or suspects you have committed a crime, they should leave you because you have supporters, you have a lot of support in the country? The answer is no. You should be answerable like any one of us. Even me as a government minister, if I'm suspected of committing a crime, I am sure the authorities would want me to account for those crimes. So similarly, if the state has information and evidence that Dr. Besigye is involved in a crime, then he should be arraigned before the judicial process for him to clear himself. And that's why the president was saying, instead of making a lot of noise about pardoning him, forgiving him, releasing him, why are you not asking why was he arrested? And like Mwenda said, there is a plethora of information that clearly indicates that Dr. Besigye and the group were involved in subversion. For instance, I know they received $37 million to bring down the government. And Besigye, in his own handwriting, was writing saying, this is not enough because this government is sophisticated, we need more money. And for your information...
Who was giving that money?
Foreign authorities. And I can tell you...
Foreign authorities is a very general term, Honorable Minister.
Yes.
Yes.
And Winnie Byanyima is on record
saying
he was meeting people who were willing to fund political activities.
I can tell you...
Legitimate political activities.
I didn't see the word legitimate.
Okay.
I can tell you...
Let's have the minister.
That actually some of the people whom they were working with are the ones who got concerned that why are you planning to kill the president to bring down the government? And they brought this information to state authorities. But we wait for court. That's why the president is saying, I had a meeting with him on Saturday and his concern was, why had the process delayed? Take Besigye to the civilian court, let the evidence be produced in the court for the whole world to see it. He can apply for bail in the court, but let the evidence come out. So I agree with the president. If Besigye is innocent, the courts will clear him. But if he's involved in subversion, then it will also come out. Now, nobody is against Kizza Besigye. Some of you claim to be close to him. Some of us come from the same area. We are neighbors. Some of us belong to the same profession. So you cannot claim you love him better than some of us. And nobody wishes him bad. But if the allegations which have been brought against him, then it is the court process. I did say that you are lawyers, and I want you to contradict what I'm saying, that even the president has no authority to order for release of a prisoner who is on remand. The law only empowers the president to pardon those who have been convicted. And the only way Dr. Kizza Besigye can get out of prison as of now is through a court order, either through the hearing which was made yesterday, if the judge orders him to get out, or if when he goes to the civilian court, he applies for bail and he gets out. But for you to say, you MPs, ministers, you're not telling the president...
Dr. Bariomonsi, the bigger question people have been asking and the arguments that came out in court yesterday
yes,
was that how or why is Dr. Besigye, how is Dr. Besigye being held today, where there is no order?
There were two arguments, and
Yes.
you know, luckily I'm not a lawyer, because in the legal profession it depends on arguments and opinions and so forth. Whereas for us in the medical profession, we look at facts and say you have a wound, you have a wound. But the law profession, it is opinions versus opinions. Like Lewis wants to give his opinion and he thinks it's an authority. There will be another opinion. And there were two differing opinions in the court. Dr. Besigye's lawyers were saying he's being held illegally. The Attorney General Chambers was saying when the Supreme Court ruled that you take the cases to the civilian court, it acknowledged that there are charges and they were not dropped. It didn't say release the inmates. Court would have said so. And therefore, the mere fact that the court said stop the proceedings, transfer the cases. So the process of transfer also extended the
Can I supplement the
Besigye's prison?
I'm
That was the
afraid-
argument.
I'm-
Another
I'm-
one,
I'm-
we leave it
I'm
to
afraid,
court.
Andrew, we need to take a
Without-
break.
Without
but
one, we leave
just
it to
one
court
supplement
to
the
make a
minister.
pronouncement on that.
You see, Charles, the problem we're facing with the Lewis and the Ssemujju is for them now to make themselves a court. You see, we know the Supreme Court.
You have convicted Besigye here. You have court.
I'm giving an opinion. I'm
Why
not
do you
making
think that
myself
mine
a
is
court.
not an opinion?
I hope I still have my time.
So there is a matter.
You
We'll come
have convicted Besigye.
Gentlemen,
Please don't
You are
interrupt me,
saying-
Ssemujju.
Yeah.
Remember, interruption me. You want to a standing
Yes.
match? I'm good for it.
Yes.
This is what I can state. The Supreme Court did not say the court martial is illegal. It said civilians should be tried in civilian courts, and therefore, Besigye's case should be transferred. The case should be transferred from the military court martial to a high court. Transfer of a case does not mean the case has been annulled. It means it must be transferred. Now, how is Besigye being held, given that the DPP has not preferred charges? You know, Besigye can be...
The DPP has not preferred charges. The warrant that took him on remand expired.
Yes, but what happened is right now, Besigye is held under the auspices of the Supreme Court ruling. To say whether it should be released or not, you can go to court and say, given that the Supreme Court ruled like this, how do we handle this matter? That is not a decision by David Lewis or Lukwago. It is a decision of the courts. The Constitutional Court can say no. When the Supreme Court said the case should be transferred, in the meantime, he can still be held on remand or he can be released. But none of us here, none of us can pronounce themselves with finality that when
Yes, you are supplementing on the ministers?
Yes. So the
Can I also supplement?
The Supreme Court was very clear. It upheld the charges. The Supreme Court upheld the charges against Besigye, said the charges should be...
The Supreme Court did not uphold charges against Besigye, upheld the charges against civilians who have been tried before the court.
Sorry, yes. Including
Besigye.
Yes, so it said the charges should be transferred to a court. It means that the charges stay, but they're transferred to a competent court. During that period of transfer, there is...
What happens?
Yes,
that's the question.
That is the legal lacuna that only courts can pronounce themselves on.
Yes. Let's take a break.
Now,
Let's take a break now. Pick up this conversation in a moment.
And we want to really...
NBS Frontline.
Welcome back to this edition of the Frontline. I like the debate going on social media, especially on X, and the people sending WhatsApp messages. I'll just pick one of Dennis and I would have loved to pick your message, but if I go into messages, we'll get lost, and we have such a large panel here. I'm going to allow the minister 1 minute to conclude your thought. Then I'll come to Ofono Pondo, give you 3 minutes, and then we'll go to Arias Lukwago.
It is very surprising for people who claim to have studied law to have expected the Supreme Court having given a judgment that the Commissioner General of Prisons would automatically open Luzira for the Karachunas from Karamoja and all those being tried in the court martial to be released. The Commissioner General has to be moved by a court order. That even us who never went to law school know it.
No, Commissioner General.
Yes, has to be moved by a court
please,
order
Honorable
to
Ssemujju.
release a
Honorable
prisoner,
Ssemujju, we are going to agree that-
not
yes.
for him to hear on radio or TV and then just release as a prisoner. That one they
Honorable
should
Minister,
know.
that is still subject to interpretation.
No,
Yes,
that's
it is.
very clear.
It is still
you
subject
go
to
to New Zealand and
interpretation.
say, yes, you get out and see whether you will get out.
Why
Unless
did-
if you have a court order
Why didn't the
that
Commissioner General
instructs.
drive him to the General Court of
So,
Martial?
so the judge, the lawyers, at least should have gone back to the Supreme Court to seek a clarification on the issue of release. So given that it is a broad issue, that's why they asked for Dr. Kiza Besigye to be produced in the court, and this now awaits the ruling of the judge.
Thank you. You asked for 1 minute?
Lastly,
yes.
The issue of the caucus sitting, it was a recommendation of the Supreme Court. If I can read in the judgment by the Chief Justice on page 196. He says, thus, after giving an elaboration, thus, there is a need for a robust legislative intervention to ensure the UPDF Act is in accord with the cherished aspirations of the people of Uganda, as was unmistakably captured in the Odoki Commission report. Indeed, when you look at the recommendations of court, they did say Parliament and the government should amend the UPDF Act. So when we convene as NRM caucus to look at the proposals being pushed by the executive, it is in fulfillment of the recommendations of the Supreme Court. So do not come here to mislead the public.
It is you misleading the public.
No,
actually.
just hold on.
I'll maybe come.
Stop the excitement. Do
It's
not
not exciting,
mislead.
you're misleading the
Yes,
people.
I am saying the Supreme Court recommended that the UPDF Act should be amended so that it is aligned with the Constitution. And this is what the executive is doing. And indeed, tomorrow we are sitting to look at two things. We are discussing the budget for the next financial year, but also to look at the proposed amendments on the UPDF Act, which we shall eventually bring to Parliament to align the UPDF Act with the national constitution.
Please come in.
Yeah, let me just put a right there, because my young brother Louis claimed that the NRM caucus is meeting tomorrow to undo the Supreme Court ruling or judgment. There is no proposed law, to the best of my recollection, since the movement, and particularly the NRM, we went into the multi-party dispensation, that has come to the floor of Parliament without the sitting and approval of the NRM caucus, because that's first of all the internal rules of the NRM parliamentary caucus, but it's also within the rules that govern Parliament, that stakeholders caucus or are consulted and they give their views, and members of Parliament
That
of
is
the
outside.
NRM,
That is outside Parliament.
members, no, I'm saying stakeholders usually call
Yeah,
stakeholders.
when there is a law before Parliament.
Yes. So the NRM caucus is not sitting only on this matter. It will sit on this matter, it will sit on others, and therefore it is misleading, I think, deliberately, to say that NRM caucus wants to undo the judgment. First of all, it is not allowable, even in the Constitution. Legislation with the retrospective legislation. So he's simply scaremongering, but he won't succeed with that, because that accusation has been made many times.
But the facts
Now,
will be out tomorrow.
well,
You'll see.
I know you're a good heckler, maybe because of your age.
But
that is
yes,
that is blackmail.
Yes, you are like we are blackmailing us.
That
But
is blackmail.
let's go back to the question you said. Is it politics? I want to say, from the opposition, it is politics.
And from the government?
From the government,
It is the law?
we are prostituting a legal battle. Whether we shall present credible evidence which will convince court is a different matter. But we are prosecuting a legal battle against Mr. Besigye and his co-accused, and probably others that may come on as we go along. And I dare say, General Mutu says, as day follows night, now Besigye is going to be before the civilian court. Watch the space. His lawyers and all the political surrogates will, first of all, go back to how he was brought back. They'll go back, they will make that pitch, how he was brought back from Kenya. 2, they will go back on cycle around the court martial. And the gymnastics went there. They will cycle back to how many cases, and I think they are doing a dry run now. If you see, you have seen both of them here, the surrogates. Ruongoya now is a good spokesperson for Mr. Besigye's issue. You have had them.
These are human rights
listing.
Even
when
you are
listing,
listing
how many cases the state has brought against Besigye and how none of them has come to fruition, which is accurate, but they are doing it on purpose. There is no law in Uganda which says if you have been acquitted 100 times, the state cannot suspect you any further.
But don't you think it is incumbent upon government, upon the state, to make sure that it avoids getting stuck in the same arguments that have failed it from securing a conviction against Besigye?
If that was the case, then the members of parliament would have written that if you have been prosecuted on different 3, 4, 5 different cases, you should never be suspected again.
Doesn't the state give them opportunity?
Doesn't
the state by that give them opportunity, give its opponents opportunity to argue that this is mere persecution, not prosecution?
Well, if people go on full zerwand, why would you prevent them?
What are you suggesting?
Why would the government prevent people who are on full zerwand from fooling themselves around? Why would we bother? As long as there is suspicion, I think the state should never be encumbered by the fact that we are prosecuted before we didn't secure a conviction, therefore we should not try again. Thirdly, Besigye by his own mouth has said Plan B. What does Plan B means?
Civil disobedience.
Yes, yes. Civil disobedience can mean many things.
No, it means
can mean many things. And Besigye himself has said Article 3, is it Article 3 or Article 2?
Article 3.
Does not preclude taking up arms. And that's what he has said.
Isn't that protected by freedom of
expression?
No.
Well, yes. If you think what you're saying has been protected, that's why we are now actually in contest with him in court, whether he is using that so-called freedom of speech. You see, you may think we are all fools, and you are the only clever one. If you think so, that's also good. I do believe.
We're going to.
He's now finding out that we are not all fools, and that we are not all as weaklings. Because you see, there are people in Uganda who think that because you enjoy a certain political status in the country, the laws should not apply to you. And I have said before, you have seen each time we go for presidential elections, some presidential candidates in particular think that because they are presidential candidates, they are outside the ambit of the law. And we say, well, if that's what you think, there's a time when the rubber will meet the tarmac.
Let's go to Arias Lukwago. But as we come to Arias Lukwago, let me take this message from Dennis Enap of Uganda People's Congress, who says, on 19th December 1969, Muhammad Sebaduka shot at Milton Obote at Lugogo. Sebaduka was arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned through the due process. When Museveni came to power, he exonerated him. I don't know what exoneration means. What is so special about the allegations by Museveni against Besigye that can't be taken through the civilian courts without reneging upon his constitutionally guaranteed rights? Dennis Enap. Council Arias Lukwago, can we have you come in briefly before you come back into studio?
Well, at the risk of going personal, I dare say those 3 regime apologists previously faced charges. Individual, each of them have faced criminal charges. For the Honorable Barrio Munsi, in the case of Nebanda, that he had stolen body parts. For Andrew Mwenda, with Charles Onyangovo, for allegedly publishing false news. And Ofono Pondo, murder. The thread in all those 3 cases, those people craved for fair trial, fair hearing. And it's the reason Mwenda went even to the Supreme Court with Onyango Obo
you're
to
being
defend
challenged,
his right to publish
Arias
what
Lukwago, you're being challenged.
News.
You're being
Or
challenged.
lies.
You're being
And
challenged.
the Supreme Court,
hold a moment.
The Supreme Court,
Honorable Arias Lukwago, 1 from me is that you refer to these 3 gentlemen as regime apologists. I don't know what they should say in return as a description for other people they disagree with. But number 2, hold it a moment. Hold it a moment. Number 2, Ofono Pondo is challenging you to state the case file number where he was charged or the decision of the court regarding what you allege was a charge of murder.
And in my case also, which charges were against me?
Well, it's on record. He has ever been accused of shooting somebody dead. That is a fact he cannot dispute. Whether there was a trial or not is a different matter.
What number?
But the point is,
he's asking
they
what is
had
the
the
file
right to
case
be
number.
heard. Whether he appeared before police and explained himself, he was heard. For the case of Honorable Barrio Munsi, he was also heard. And for Andrew Mwenda, I've told you, he went a notch higher to seek for a Supreme Court declaration that publication of what Mr. Museveni or any other leader considers to be lies is a right. And indeed, it's on record that you have a right to publish what the state considers to be lies. What precludes Dr. Besigye from getting the same treatment that whatever accusations they have against him, he should have a right to be heard in a court of competent record, not a kangaroo court which was disbanded by the Supreme Court. So why hasn't he been arraigned before a court of competent record, a court of judicature? Tell me, who has stopped the state from doing so? That is number 1. 2, the Constitution does not give them that latitude to drag their feet and do it at their own pace, that they are doing the mechanical transfer of files from point A to point B. The 48-hour rule. Go to Article 23. You have only 48 hours. Oh, you had only 48 hours following the decision of the Supreme Court to do whatever you needed to do to have any transfer done. Short of that, you are abrogating the Constitution. 3, any attempt you are doing right now at tinkering with the law to resuscitate the defunct General Court Martial must be done cautiously, well knowing that there is a principle made by the Supreme Court. Civilians cannot be subjected to martial law. That is the reason they annulled Section 117. So there cannot be any reincarnation of that provision in any shape or form. Whatever, you are going back tomorrow. You are going into the caucus. Money is going to change hands like it happened with the Tojukwata. With the age limit, with the term limits. I know they are going to be oiled. But it is not possible under the provisions of Article 92 for you to enact any legislation that has the effect of defeating the letter and spirit of the Supreme Court decision. That is not going to happen, because the principle is very clear. Don't subject civilians to martial law. Finally, you cannot arrest people and purport that you are keeping them, that argument you were talking about, which is fallacious, that by ordering or directing that files either to pending before the general court martial be transferred to the civilian courts, that by extension the remand warrants were extended. That is a pedestrian argument which can only be made by amateurs like those three gentlemen, or people who are taking a maiden voyage in legal interpretation. The general court martial was quashed. The proceedings rather were quashed. And the court said, the Supreme Court said, all proceedings, all prosecutions must cease forthwith. That is the wording of the Supreme Court decision. They must cease. If you wanted to continue with any kind of prosecution, you cannot circumvent the provisions of Article 120. The general, like Lois Rubongo ya observed, the general, yes, the DPP has no powers to sanction general court files.
Council Arias
The
Lukwago,
DPP can only sanction charges prepared or preferred by the police. Right now, there is no police file against the Dr. At least to our knowledge, there is nothing.
Yes.
There is no way now you can keep Dr. Besigye incarcerated without any charges in the courts of competent jurisdiction.
Mr. Arias Lukwago, what did the Supreme Court mean when it said seize all trials, transfer those files? What is the meaning of that?
No. They said transfer charges or any complaint you have to the civilian courts. You see, they didn't say mechanically take a truck to match in the general court martial, load all those files onto the truck and you pass via the DPP office and take them to the, I think that's the retro interpretation they want to give, take them to the civilian court. No. They said, please assemble, if you have any complaint against them, like Mr. Museveni is claiming through Mwenda that Besigye wanted to kill him, let him go to police, record a statement. Like you go to CID, let me advise you. Let Museveni go to CID, record the statement that Besigye wanted to kill him, then the file is assembled. But by the way, he cannot start that process here. He can only go to Kenya and start the process from there to extradite Besigye formally and bring him here. Because you can't even do it here when there was just illegal rendition. So, the transfer they talked about, please don't interpret it literally. They are saying if you have accusations against them, lay them properly before a competent court of record, not just to get the manual file. The one of Freeman Mugabe, that one was quashed. You can't get the one of Freeman Mugabe and take it to the civilian court. But if you are talking about investigative files, ESO, CMI do not have investigative files which you cannot take to the DPP. Read the Article 120 of the Constitution. But the only point I want to conclude with, General Museveni and his son, they have said they want to kill Dr. Besigye. I want to assure Muhoz, I want to assure Mr. Museveni, you are not going to kill Dr. Besigye as you are now plotting to do.
Let's first go back a little to that argument, and we are continuing with this discussion on the Afro mobile app.
Frontline.